What's going on, guys? Obviously, this is somewhat different. I don't exactly really know how to record this, but I figure I'm just gonna start recording something and we'll see where we get. But we are working on a new board, kind of in a different way than I have done them in the past. I'm going to use a hot wire, casting up plaster rocks. I don't exactly know where we're going, but I figure I'll just record some bits and pieces along the way and take you kind of along the journey. All this is already kind of glued and set, and it is modular, so there are tiles. I'm not exactly sure the direction I want to take this. As far as slopes and stuff, you can kind of see some kind of indications of maybe what I want to do, but honestly, I'm not going to know until I start taking the hot wire and just cutting away at it. So I'm just going to start hacking away at this thing with a hot wire cutter, see where we get, and hopefully it'll guide me in some capacity. Most of this is probably going to be a time-lapse thing, but we'll see. Like I said, I don't exactly know how I'm going to record this, so whatever. Here we go. Okay, so you just watched me do all of this. I'm not exactly sure how I feel about whatever the heck is going on. So I've got my little test subject model, and all of these are going to be fine. Now, I do have Sculptamold, which again I've never used, but I'm going to try to make this make more sense after the fact. As far as rock placements, which, just walk you over here real quick, I'm just casting up a bunch out of this one mold, and then if I need smaller pieces, I'm going to break them into smaller pieces. I'm not exactly sure how that's going to translate here, because there's nowhere super specific. Like, obviously all these harsh edges I'm going to have to do something with, but even just covering them with Sculptamold should help. But this, I feel like I built this kind of wrong in a sense, and I would be better off almost leveling out more of this into basically making it a big hill. I might start messing with some of the rocks next to see what it's looking like, and then if I need to level out more of this, I can, like this. I'm not sure if I'm going to need to change that. Some of this, I don't know what's really going to be playable and what's not. Like this, obviously, you can walk up this. This, I'm cut at a shallow enough angle that it can be walked up, but I don't really know. So, not exactly sure. Same thing with this. I just originally planned on this being kind of a big slope up to like a big cliff thing, which obviously this could be split and each could be a board edge. Yeah, like I said, I don't really exactly know what I'm doing. I'm just basically trying to do all new things than what I've done in the past, and we're just gonna kind of go from there. And then there's one blank tile, obviously, that's just not going to have any landmass on it. I already feel like I'm kind of overdoing it with the landmass, but again, typically I underdo it, so I'm going to overdo it with this one, and we'll just see where we get. So, yeah, I guess next we'll play with some rocks, maybe? Sure. Okay, so I just finished kind of going through adding the Sculptamold to this one piece. It dries way faster than I would have expected. And that kind of sucks. I don't exactly know how to deal with that, but basically I've got one little piece of rock stuck over here, and we got one little piece of rock, or one big piece stuck there. And then I kind of just filled in and covered most of the styrofoam edges. This part I'm not super worried about, and then I don't know if I want to actually do full ground coverage. I don't know if I have enough, so I'm going to wait on that. But that is essentially kind of what I'm doing. I don't know if it's going to come out any sort of useful, but that's the plan. It looks kind of interesting currently, but we have a whole lot more to do. So here we go. All right, so obviously this has taken a lot more time as I am in different clothes, but let me show you kind of what we got going on here. I'm not going to lie, this material was rather frustrating to work with, but I think I was also doing it too thin, hindsight and all. Now, I wasn't going for like 100% coverage just because I didn't have enough to do that, but I also think it's like I wasn't super sure where to put rocks. I didn't cast enough rocks, obviously, to cover every vertical surface, so I'm not sure how I'm going to paint this. So like this little thing, for example, maybe I'll just leave some of this brown like it's dirt, because this wouldn't be rock. But I think some of like this I might paint the same as I'm going to do the rocks, just so it makes more sense, because otherwise I'm not exactly sure how I would go about painting and or flocking that. But yeah, this is I don't know exactly where we're going yet. We're still in the land of let's hope this works out. So I'm going to go ahead and start getting the ground paint, the earth paint on, which I think I'm just going to try this raw umber because I want a nice dark color to work with. And then I'll deal with the rocks afterwards. And then if I decide that I don't want to paint some of these surfaces like rock, I'll just paint them afterwards. But that'll at least give me a visual of kind of what it's going to look like. So this process always takes forever, so let's just get to it. All right, so this is mostly dry. There's still spots that aren't covered, but that's fine. We're gonna move to rocks, which I'm gonna do. I've done this once before. I'm gonna try to do this again. These are just gonna be watered down paints, yellow, green, kind of a beige, tan, brown, umber, and then a gray, and maybe a black over top. I don't know. But I'm gonna basically mix all this up, really thin them down, and then you'll kind of see there's better videos out there than I'm sure this is going to be. And we're just going to basically wash all of the rock spots and let it kind of all blend together and create a natural look. So I'll try to showcase this on something, and then I'll just time lapse the rest of it because it's probably going to take forever. Here we go. All right, so starting with yellow, basically we're just going to I'm going to dab this in spots, and because it's wet, obviously it's going to flow into spots. So, and then we'll cover this up with other colors later. Okay, next we're going to do the same with green, but we're going to basically hit spots that haven't been hit. And from what I remember, this is pretty forgiving, so I've probably not put too much thought into it. Because once we hit some of these other colors over top, it'll make a little more sense, I think. But again, if you're interested in this kind of wash technique, you might give it a look, because there's some pretty good stuff out there kind of explaining it. So we're gonna move to the third color, which is a beige kind of tan. And I'm gonna kind of get this a little more messy, a little more coverage, try to cover up most of the white that we got showing. But it doesn't have to be perfect. We do still have one more color after this. And then obviously the wash color, which I think in my case is going to be gray. Now, I've never done this over plaster, so I guess we'll see on that front. I'm not loving it right this second. We're just gonna trust the process, which, to be fair, has been most of this board so far. So I guess we'll see. All right, now we've got the umber color. This is a super watered down version of what is on the board. Because this, I think, is a little darker than the color I was gonna use, which I don't think is a good thing. But we're just gonna do a couple spots. Part of why I like using the foam brush is that you can literally just press it down and have it put out like a little sploosh of water. But my thought was maybe using this color would help unify stuff a little bit. Now, hopefully, this will help. This is the gray, and this I kind of want all over everything. I think looking at this, I will probably do this in black over top, just because this gray isn't quite giving me the coverage or blending that I'm wanting. Specifically with the green, it's just too overbearing. I think if I could get a unifying overcoat, that would probably get me a little closer to what I'm looking for. But we'll see. I don't hate kind of what I'm getting so far. It just needs that over color. Now I'm just gonna go around and dab up a little bit of all this excess just so it's not so much water just kind of puddling on here. Okay, so I'm gonna go ahead and hit all of the rest of the rock on this, and then I might come back and do a pass of like a black or something darker over the top of these rocks just to unify them. So Here we go, time lapse. Okay, so I did end up going back and doing a one of these watered down black washes over everything. The colors are still, in some cases, are a bit bright, I think. So like you can see down here, it's very dark, and then there's some bright spots. But to be fair, that is kind of the point of like a wet wash type of paint for these things. Everything else is over there, but I'm not going to record any of this. It's just going to be all time lapse. Basically, I'm going to try this stuff because I hate mixing it because I seem to always mess up how glue to water ratio it should be. I'm going to sprinkle down some of this kind of like extra dark green, just in some little patches. And then I'm going to be doing most coverage with this stuff. So those are the only two colors I'm going to use. I'm going to see how that goes. And then I've got some leftover clump foliage that I might sprinkle around up against some rocks and stuff. I'm also still waiting to see about doing like some sprinkle rock type stuff around all the edges. But based on what I have around, I don't know exactly what I would use that for. So I'm just going to time lapse and we'll see what we get. All right, here we go. Okay, so the grass is all done. This is the next day. Now we're going to move to brushing some of this. Now, some of this you could see like where the glue didn't fully take. This piece has been brushed, so it's just literally a slight brushing and then knocking off whatever comes off. But that's going to allow me to get off some of this. It'll kind of give it, you can kind of see that has not been brushed. This has been brushed. Maybe a little bit more like roughness to it. I do think this looks a little bit better, but I'm not sure. There's another stage of brushing that I'm not sure if I'm going to do or not, but we will see. And then I'm going to mess with a little bit of like ground scatter that I might sprinkle around. Again, the goal is to keep it modular, so we'll see. But we're just going to time lapse brushing up all this stuff, and we'll see what that looks like once I'm done. Here we go. Okay, so a couple things. I'm pretty happy with what this is right now. I'll show you something else in just a second. So this is post brushing, and you kind of saw it's literally just a brush. You can go a little bit heavier in some spots, but you get a little bit of more natural look. This is still really shiny, and that really bugs me. I'm hoping that the scenic cement will matte that out, but we will see. But you can kind of see what we're looking at right now. So over here is where I'm kind of messing with some extra like scatter bits. So I've got some clump foliage from trees that I can, add just as little shrubs and stuff around. And then this is like shredded up mulch and pine straw with some little tiny rocks in there. I don't know if I like the rocks being in there. I'm going to do a mixture of just the mulch type stuff and see if that works better. And then all this is just going to get one big giant coat of glue, but you know, you can kind of get an idea of what we're working with here. So I'm going to figure that out, and then we'll time lapse, sprinkle in the whole thing, and then I guess after that it'll be mostly done. I'll paint the board edges black and then reveal. All right, here we go. Okay, that is a wrap on this board. You saw a couple of the kind of setups in the time lapse. Obviously, having a big 2-foot piece limits the modularity, but you know, that is what it is. This is still shiny even after a couple coats of like spray glue. That is what it is. I considered clear coating it. I don't care that much. I'm happy enough with what it is. I do think this board has a significantly higher quality standard than anything else that I've done. So hopefully y'all are happy with it. I'm happy with it. Hopefully I'll maybe learn something along the way. Hopefully this video wasn't terribly hard to follow. Again, I've never done anything like this. I didn't really know where to start with recording content like this. So hopefully this was useful for you guys. If you want to see more of this kind of stuff, let me know down below. I do actually enjoy building this stuff. I just, you know, I don't really know. A couple things. I know people that don't typically touch on this. So this has taken, from the time that I started, almost exactly 1 week. So if you're curious about a time frame, that's what it is. And then as far as cost of supplies, this is probably close to $100. Now some of that is like the hot wire I didn't have, so I had to buy that. So, and depending on like how you go about doing a couple different things, you might be able to get this done a little bit cheaper. This is a 3-foot by 3-foot board, but I feel like you watch people do this kind of stuff and a lot of that stuff's a little ambiguous. So about a week, call it $100 for this 3-foot board. But I think all in all, I'm really happy with the result. I was going to do an autumn themed board, but I just went with something nice and safe because I don't have a woodland board that I was super happy with, and I'm good with this, and I get to use my existing trees. So that is cool. That is gonna be it for this. I'm gonna stop rambling. If you guys like this kind of stuff, please let me know down below. Do hit that sub button. We are closing on 1,000, kinda. And if you want to see anything specific, let me know down below. All right. I appreciate you guys. I will see you all in the next one. Bye.